Toyota had a bunch of big debuts at the Kenshiki Forum in Brussels this week. And so this is the European Toyota EVs that are debuting, but I think we will get a lot of this here in the States too. But before I cover the refreshed bZ4X, the refreshed Lexus RZ, and a new Toyota CHR, I think possibly the most intriguing thing here from this whole event was that they teased 3 other EVs that are coming by late 2026. So in less than 2 years here, including what appears to be a small pickup truck that'll be electric. And it'll likely just be a production version of the EPU concept we saw a couple of years ago, which was almost exactly the same size as a Ford Maverick. So Toyota's beating Ford to an electric, Maverick essentially, even though Ford, you think they would have had that teed up and ready to go here. But they have decided not to. And so Toyota's going to fill that void here, and at least for Europe. I do hope they bring it to the U.S., though. I think pickup trucks, it makes a lot of sense to bring them to the U.S. here, so we will see. I guess they just really have to, figure out if they can build it here because, chicken tax, I think, still applies, even if, again, other tariffs don't go through. So, we'll have to see about that. But the other 2 vehicles they teased there are still a mystery, but the roof silhouette of the one on the right suggests it'll be a production version of the Land Cruiser SE concept that we saw back in 2023. But now, before we get into the new Toyotas, I actually want to cover the refreshed Lexus first, the RZ here, because that's going to be the first one to use Toyota's first application of a simulated gear shift program and sounds to go along with it in an EV here called the Interactive Manual Drive. And so refresh might be a generous term here for the RZ. There's actually no exterior or interior changes unless you go for the new F-Sport version, which I'll talk about in a second here. But you do get a yoke steering wheel, I believe is an option now. I don't know if it's standard or not, but they're finally going forward with the yoke steering wheel. They've been kind of toying with that for a few years. And the steer-by-wire system here for the RZ. And so it does actually get some really nice mechanical improvements here for the RZ, though, with a bigger 77 kilowatt-hour battery. And they say it'll do an extra 62 miles of range on the easier WLTP test cycle, but they didn't give any total range estimates for that one just yet. And the base one gets a small bump to 221 horsepower for the single motor front wheel drive version, which is 20 more horsepower than before. But the all wheel drive version now gets 375 horsepower, which is 67 more than before. And then there's a new RZ 550e F Sport that does 402 horsepower and does get sportier styling that's new there. And I'm excited to try that one because that's over 100 more horsepower than what you have in the current RZ here for the top version. And Lexus North America says the 2026 RZ will come later this year. So coming, fairly quickly, and that's, very exciting and sounds like a good time. 400 horsepower and a little RZ there. But the bZ4X also gets a more substantial refresh here for the 2026 model. You're getting a revised front end with a new bumper and lights and a revised interior that now has a wider console with dual charging pads and the Lexus 14-inch touchscreen as standard, which includes those knobs for the volume and climate, but loses the other hard buttons that the bZ4X used to have. But it's interesting that the Lexus screen, I thought that'd be kind of an exclusive thing to the Lexus, but it's seems like that is going to start trickling down to other Toyotas here, apparently, at least for the electric ones. And I mean, I prefer the Lexus system, honestly. I mean, it's nice to have some of the physical buttons with a Toyota, but I think the Lexus system does everything so well. I've never had any complaints with the way Lexus does that because, again, we still have knobs for volume and climate. So the bZ4X also gets some mechanical upgrades as well, with it getting a 73.1 kilowatt hour battery, about 4 less than the Lexus, but that still pairs to your choice of either a front motor front wheel drive setup or a dual motor all wheel drive setup. And like the Lexus, the front wheel drive one gets 20 more horsepower for 221 horsepower total, but the all wheel drive one gets a huge jump from, in the bZ4X you got just 214 horsepower in the all wheel drive one. Now that goes up to 338 horsepower. So now bZ4X all wheel drive is going to be a little bit of a hot rod here, which is fun. I mean, that's more power than a GR Corolla. Obviously this is heavier, but that's going to be fun. Range is improved by 36 miles on the WLTP test cycle again. And in the US, the old one gets up to 252 miles of range. So I'd say this one gets closer to 300 now, but might not crack that 300 number. We'll have to see. But it also doesn't sound like peak charge speeds have improved at all. So that means about 150 kilowatt peak charge rate. But they do now have battery preconditioning and a 22 kilowatt AC onboard charger now. So both of those will help, improve the actual charge curve and improve, your chances of actually hitting those peak speeds there. So that's, a nice improvement. So it means that in reality, even though on paper it might look the same, in the real world, you'll probably have a better experience, which is great. There also will be a smaller 57.7 kilowatt hour battery version, at least for Europe, with a meager 165 horsepower. And that's obviously designed for people who don't need, a bunch of power or range, and sounds, very well suited for Europe. And so these refreshed bZ4Xs will be arriving in Europe this summer, they say. But due to our imminent deregulation here in the States, I'm not sure if they're rushing this one over. bZ4X wasn't a hot seller. So we'll have to see, but I'm sure we'll get it eventually, I'm guessing, and a nice refresh though for that. The other big debut though, alongside the bZ4X refresh, was a new electric Toyota CHR called the CHR Plus. And so after the CHR was discontinued in 2022 here in the States, it went on to get a new generation in Europe that's gas and hybrid. I think there's also a plug-in hybrid version of it available elsewhere in the world here, but this might actually be the return of the CHR potentially for us here in the States, because they did show us the concept of this vehicle a few years back at the LA Auto Show, which suggests they were toying with the idea at least of, bringing this vehicle back. And previously we had thought it'd be called the bZ4X, and now I think they're getting rid of the BZ naming going forward, and so I think that's why they're sticking with CHR here for this. And so I think there's also a decent chance this one could come to the States because it's bigger than the old CHR and the current CHR that's available in Europe. So this is 6.3 inches longer than the current CHR on a 4.3 inch longer wheelbase. That makes it about 6 inches shorter than the bZ4X, which sounds like it'd be a very, good vehicle. And also the sportier vibe, I think, certainly fits too. I think this could fit in as, again, a lower cost option, obviously. But it's something, for people who want something the size of Corolla Cross, but, that electric thing, the sportier thing, the more expressive design of the CHR, like it's always had, I think would kind of fit here in the States. We'll see again what they decide to do, but it does seem to share a decent amount with the bZ4X, with very similar styling up front there, and having an interior up front that seems almost copied directly from the bZ4X. There's also the same quirky steering wheel and the gauge cluster setup, along with the 14-inch Lexus screen and dual wireless chargers and everything. The entire front part of the interior is copied directly from bZ4X. The powertrain is also copied over as well, with front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive both available. Front-wheel drive one does 221 horsepower. All-wheel drive one does, again, 338 horsepower still. In a vehicle that's 6 inches shorter than bZ4X means this one will be even more fun, I think, arguably. That one will do a 5.2 seconds 0 to 60, they say. There's also going to be a 165 horsepower version available, again, at least for Europe. And when you go for that, you also get the smaller 57.7 kilowatt hour battery. But surprisingly, all other CHR Pluses here get the 77 kilowatt hour battery from the Lexus. More battery than you get in the bZ4X, which seems kind of odd. But I confirmed it. That is the way that they have it. I checked the media site to double check. That is what they are claiming here. This gets a bigger battery than the bZ4X. That gives it a range, though, of 373 miles, again, on the European cycle. But it's very impressive there, and it'll do 150 kilowatt DC fast charging as well. And that one will be going on sale in Europe later this year. And so we will see, again, what they end up doing with that here in the States, if we get it or not. But, really solid vehicles here, and great to see, again, this rollout of, some evolution as far as the batteries and evolution as far as the motors here, and higher range, all this, all these nice improvements here for these electric Toyotas, and shows that Toyota is still very much investing and improving the electric stuff, and again, bringing out 3 new ones here, just in the next under 2 years here as well, including that truck. So that'll be great for Europe. Hopefully, again, we get some of those here in the States as well.